And yes, it is happening. I'm live. It's the Nazarite, bringing you Hebrew lore from days of yore, right here in Yerushalayim. Mm, it's good to be here. So today was the first of Adar, the first of the first Adar, Aleph Be'adar Aleph, as it's known. It's a month where there is this kind of quality, right? There's a quality of reversal. There's a quality which is unlike any other month out of the year, be it the fact that there can be two of them, be it the fact that the nature of the holiday of the month itself and the holiday of Purim is in there. I spoke in the past in my, on my old channel on the value of Purim, and I may have one here in the archive from right on the archive playlist. Hey, look at that! Little Andre is here. Where's you? I'm here, Trevor Noah. I never really dug Trevor Noah. I didn't give his comedy a lot of a shot. Some, it just never really clicked with me. And I didn't. He was on a late night show, right? Trevor Noah had a late night show, has a late night show. I don't remember, but I didn't. I've never seen it. So I don't know his comedy that well. So let's see. I'm going to get into a comment and a shout out. So first of all, I need to give a shout out to my man, Little Andre. He was watching one of my old videos and he noticed that I mentioned, well, his name and the name of Sara Eisenman. Sara Eisenman is an Essene Nazarite who little Andre digitally introduced me to. I was very excited, as you people who might follow the channel know. I am in search of female Nazarites, male Nazarites too, but female Nazarites are that much rarer. And the rarest, the rarest which I haven't met yet, is a proper halachic Orthodox Nazarite female, right? A woman, which I haven't, a Nazira Orthodoxit, as it were, a Nazira Rabbanit, and I haven't met one. And I did mention at the time, a couple of months ago, I mentioned Sara Eisenman and her husband because they are both Essenes, and they seem to have a lovely path that they're following, very much connected to Israel, very much connected to the Hebrew faith. And I wanted at the time, I got in touch with her to do a dialogue, but she and I were going through different things and it never really materialized. And so little Andre was presumably was listening to that old recording or viewing that old recording, and he sent her a message. He sort of gave me a shout out to her, and she in turn gave me a shout out and sort of rekindled that idea of a dialogue. And so please look forward to that. It's follow her. The links are in the description on Facebook and her channel on YouTube. Her channel on YouTube, I don't think is active. I might be wrong, but on Facebook, the link is in there. She is definitely highly active. She's got a place that's more text. She's got a place that's more images, right? So she's got her regular profile and her public figure profile. So whichever you're more comfortable with, go for it. It's a very her channel and the things that she has to share and that her husband has to share, they are very uplifting, life affirming, and unorthodox. And I mean that in the best possible way, right? In a way that I can completely vibe and connect with. Let's put it that way. All right, let's continue here. Let's see. Shalom mishpacha. So mishpacha, by definition, is singular, right? Mishpachot is plural, right? Little Andre says, "You're not looking like the Lion of Yehuda, but like the Lion of Levi again tonight." I appreciate it. I do appreciate it. So let's see. Yodidiau, the Gimatria man, and I were talking yesterday and the day before, and he mentioned over the last few days, he's been asking me about certain ways in which certain words in Hebrew are pronounced and written, and he's been looking at different manuscripts of the Torah to try and discern and locate the more original or authentic way in which certain words are spelled. And I told him, look, there's what's called full punctuation, ktiv maleh, and not empty. And oh come on, there's full and it's not full and empty. It's oh man, I'm forgetting my English here once again. Anyway, there is one with more punctuation, a way to write things to spell them out with more punctuation and with less punctuation, so to speak. It's difficult to explain, but there are some times when a certain word can be spelled in a couple of ways. phonetically it would still sound the same. But insofar as the gematria is concerned, insofar as the spiritual root, which has that letter or doesn't have that letter, is concerned, it changes a lot. And so Yodidiahu is looking for the original, the more authentic ways in which the Torah has been written, right, in the Masorah, in the Masoret, in the tradition that was handed down. And he was asking me about the different words. And then he said, he asked me if I've ever thought of recording the Torah, like having an audio recording of the entire Torah, right, of me uh, speaking, right, or chanting, right, with the trup, with the melody, with the ta'amim, the Torah. And I said, you know what? I did not think of that. But something I would want to do is write my own Torah, as every king, every king, and some say every person, right, and every Hebrew should at some point write their own Torah. Now, if you can't invest like 80 or 150,000 shekel or dollars in an actual Torah scroll written by a proper scribe, then I think you writing your own Torah in your handwriting is the next best thing. Now, when we spoke of this, he said he might do it digitally, but create his own font, an idea which I loved because we were talking again in the last few days, and he said, why is it that people who publish the Torah, the Chumash, right, the 5 books of Moses, why is it that they would say that you may not replicate or record or make any kind of copy of of the text because it's the Torah? And I said, yes, it is the Torah, but the typeset, right, the fonts, the different ways in which it's laid out, that's something a graphic artist did, and that's something that printing, industry people did, and they deserve to be recognized and paid for that. But they don't say that they own the Torah; they say that they own the typeset or the font or typeface or whatever you call it, right? So he said that he's gonna, if ever he's going to do it, it will be when he'll either hire someone or do it himself, right, to create his own font, and then write the Torah that way digitally, which I thought was a great idea. At least before you write it in your handwriting, or before you pay a scribe, or before you learn how to be a scribe yourself and write it on parchment, right? That whole thing. Then to record it in your own voice or to write it in your own handwriting, it's or digitally, but in a font that you bought or purchased or came up with. There's a lot of potential there. This idea of having the Torah which you wrote for yourself and you carry it with you all the time, it must be, a, if it's your handwriting, invaluable, because there's no other one like it. There's no other one like it. The whole point of those different scrolls in the different traditions, Ashkenazi, Sfaradi, and all that, but they are all the same type of font, right? It's the scribe, the what's called the stam font, the sacred font with certain letters written in a certain way, and the Ari, with his extra things, and there's a lot there. But to have a Torah that you wrote in your own handwriting, even if it's in a notebook, even if it's not on parchment, because I said I would want it to be vegan, so that means vegan parchment. It means vegan, vegan ink, let's say, and I don't know how these will come about. And that's what I would want anyway. And I do want to write my own Torah at some point. I think that's something amazing for a person to do. Again, even if it's just with a pencil in a notebook, it can be your Torah that you wrote for yourself. Would it be something that you would haul out on Shabbos and read in front of the congregation in shul? No, because for that, at least in the rabbinic shuls, you'll need to have certain procedure, a certain scroll, a certain kosher seal, right, that's been put on it, written by a specific scribe and all that. But the Torah that you write yourself can be in your own handwriting, and it, in some ways, would be even more unique and certainly more rare than a scribe written, right, a Torah written by a scribe on scrolls. But anyway, that's just me. That's just me thinking. So yeah, to record the Torah in your own voice and to write it in your own handwriting, that could be very cool. And I'm certainly thinking of doing that. But that's to put on the list. I don't know when that will happen. Let's just see here. I want to maybe keep it short this evening, but let's see. Hey, Burning Element is here. Hi, how you doing? And Oregon Freebird is here. Andre, I said hello to you already. Hey there, little Andre. Who else is watching? Come out, wherever you are. Somebody else is watching because I saw somebody beside myself give a like. Yeah, somebody gave a like. Vehu haya vehu hove vehu yihye, says the burning element. Indeed, betif'ara. Notice Haya hove yihye, the continuation of, right, that's from the piyut, that's from the poem Adon Olam, which is it's a very beautiful poem, and it's recited in the morning prayers in Shachrit, and the idea of vehu haya, vehu hove, vehu yihye betifara, right? Sort of all coming together, haya, hove, yihye, past, present, and future, sort of coming together in tiferet, in the middle there, right in the middle of the tree of life. That also corresponds with the plain and simple yod he vav he. And so well, and there's a lot there, but yes, for sure. Ah, there you are, little Andre said. Oregon Freebird, Rabbi Greenbaum on the Azamra channel sings the Torah sometimes. I only listen to a few Orthodox rabbis, and he is one. And you, Karen, said little Andre. Well, first of all, that's cool. Does he sing it in a different melody, or does he sing it, sort of, does he compose the melody, or is it the traditional te'amim, right? Is it the traditional melody of his people? Because there are many different ways to chant the Torah. And as I mentioned before, right, there are chants for the Torah, there's chants for the prophets, there's chants for Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, and for Lamentations, Eicha, and for Esther, which we will be reading soon enough on the holiday of Purim, and for Job, Eov, and the Psalms, and so there's all kinds of ways to chant. It's beautiful, in my opinion. I've been very fortunate and privileged to go to different shuls over the years and hear different ways in which the Torah is chanted, and different pronunciations, and it's such a world entire. So I'm glad that you have somebody who sings the Torah there, Karen. Good for you. Little Andre said, "Not sure I've heard of Rabbi Greenbaum, but maybe I'll check him out." Craig, hey Craig, how you doing? I'd love to write my own Torah, also on my list. Yeah, and no doubt, no doubt. I think people who follow Torah, it's some at some point it's something that even if you don't act on it, at some point that it's like, damn, you know what, I really should make that happen again, be it in a notebook in your own handwriting, or be it that you pay a scribe to do it, for thousands and thousands of dollars. Either one is valid. One of them, as I said, is valid and kosher to read in front of a congregation and say the brachas, right, the blessings and all that, and one of them is a Torah that you write with your own handwriting, right, in a notebook, for instance. I love that idea. I think it's so humble. I think it's so humble, and yet, and yet it speaks of the high. It bespeaks the highest of the high. I love that. I love that. Anyway, I love that. I really, really do, and I want to do it. Correct, said the burning element. Yes. Little Andre said, I have no deal with the rabbis or anybody, just with religion, organized religion. Well, yeah, I have a lot to say about organized religion. Good things, bad, not so good things, and downright bad things. It sounds like traditional chanting to me. Oh, okay, cool. I wonder which tradition it is. If he's a Greenbaum, makes sense that it's the Ashkenazi trup, right? The Ashkenazi melody, which I learned from my bar mitzvah, and I learned others during my time in yeshiva. But when I go up to read the Torah, it hasn't happened in a long time, but when I go up to read in front of the congregation, then I do it with my father's melody. Now, interestingly enough, my father has a beautiful singing voice, and certainly a beautiful chanting voice. And when I was about 12, and he was getting into, how do I wrap the tefillin, and getting me prepared for my bar mitzvah, and the Torah portion that I read on that Shabbat. So throughout the entire year, throughout my 13th year, right? Because the birthday is basically the end of the year. During my 13th year, when I was 12, he made a recording for me of the Torah portion and of the Haftarah, right? The parts from the prophets with the blessings and the whole thing through and through. And I loved listening to that. And I've emulated to some degree. I mean, I love language and I love Hebrew, so I put my ass into it later in life. But when I was just 12, and learning how to read for the first time, learning how to chant rather the Torah, then that cassette was of great utility. I have a recording of him singing as well, Kol Mekadesh, the Shabbos hymn, which I also did on this channel, right? And it was erased, but I digress. So yeah, it's true. It's chanting. It's beautiful chanting. Craig Lee, sorry, should have greeted first. Just came online as you were mentioning writing out the Torah. So hi all, may Yah be with you and with you. Good to have you here. Evening all, says Ariel. Hey Ariel, how you doing? Respect for everyone, not care their race, not care their color, not their religion. It's true. So wait, who is that? Is that Stefan Marley? Is that Damian Marley? I'm assuming. I mean, it could be either one, or Ziggy. It could be Ziggy too. What is organized religion? Well, as I see it in my own point of view, organized religion, the way that I know it now, as the rabbinic organized Jewish religion, is the post destruction of the Second Temple Jewish faith. Where if before that you had more sects and denominations, not cults, but proper sects, and you had people who followed halachas of their own rabbis in different times and in different ways. Again, I see a great break between the destruction of the, and so do the sages themselves, a great divide and a great break when the Second Temple was burned by Rome. And they themselves, right? Chazal themselves, our sages themselves, they speak of this iron curtain that was placed between Israel and their heavenly Father since the destruction of the temple. And this is manifested, it has manifested and is manifested in all sorts of ways, including many decrees and halachas which came into play after the destruction of the temple while they were in exile. And when Rabbi Yehuda Nasi decided to compile the Mishnah, that's where it's made plainly obvious that there were different traditions and different halachas and different ways to follow, and they were all proper. And after the destruction of the Second Temple, and after the Talmud was sealed a few hundred years later, now we have halacha as it is. That is it, pretty much unchanging, pretty much. And also, insofar as how you can derive teachings from the Torah, that has also kind of, more than kind of, been solidified. Things became solid. Things that were more fluid at the time became solid. And that was, again, in order to preserve, right, to go into survival mode, you had to do certain things, make some sacrifices, make some compromises. I get that. But it still rendered certain things, well, not useless, but just gone. And that's a shame. But I understood why they did what they did. As I see, that's what organized religion is. Good point, the burning element. Yes, it is a good point. Little Andre says, I have no beef with Rastafarians and not even with the Pastafarians, even though I highly, highly disagree on highly and the spaghetti monster. It's the flying spaghetti monster. His noodly appendages shall touch us all. Let's see. Ariel says, "Do you ever feel self-conscious about not having webbed fingers?" No, because because we have the edge here. You know what I mean? We have the remnant of the webs, and that's enough for me. It's a reminder of that which we were to some degree. Oregon said, "That is wonderful that he made you a recording. My father also has a beautiful singing voice, and he plays the guitar. So does mine." He used to sing at a lot of weddings and funerals, but not so much anymore. Right, so my father never sang in weddings or funerals to the best of my knowledge. What he did do is go up to the Torah every now and then, either to read a specific portion of the portion or the entire portion as a Baal Koreh, right, a cantor, or a laner, as it's known in Yiddish. Right, he would lane, he would read, chant the Torah, and I have so many memories. I speak I speak of organized religion a lot, relatively, or not a lot, but relatively like a lot in this channel, having grown up Orthodox and all that. But I have some very fond memories of watching my father uh, go up and read. And when I had the ability, the chance, the capacity to do the same thing because of his teachings, and I still continue to do that way later. I was reading the Torah, into my late 20s or maybe even my early 30s. And whenever I was called up to read, or there were times when I even read on Yom Kippur in front of the congregation, in front of a congregation, and that's no small thing, no small thing. So I'm really, really thankful for my father and those teachings and the way that he recorded things for me. Alia says, I heard everyone had webbed fingers before Noah, and they used to bully him for having unwebbed hands. Wow, that must be midrash, but I'd love to hear the midrash. Can you give me a source? Can anyone out there give me a source on Noah and the webbed hands? Now, I'll tell you this idea of the flood is one where, and I mentioned this before, when I was in yeshiva, that's almost 20 years ago, when I was in yeshiva in Tzfat, there was a person there who was, a researcher, and he drew certain comparisons or correlations between the flood and certain, what would be the word? Well, earthly phenomenon that occurred, as things along the lines of the Earth and the axis, right, of the road, the axis and the rotation, right, the tilt in the axis of the Earth, things having to do with the atmosphere and the way that it came into being as we know it now, and things having to do with the flood. And I've mentioned this before, that at the end of at the end of the flood, it says that the different seasons, that things now become more cyclic, and it's a sort of periodic thing. What is it? It's heat and cold and sowing and reaping, right? Something like that. Yeah, that it that it's a wheel that keeps on going around and around, as opposed to before when it was more erratic, more chaotic, again, order out of chaos, and so out of the flood came many different things. Let's see. Little Andre says Julian Marley calls him Haile, like Haile Selassie. In his song Boom Draw, partakers of the herb will sing that song. So Haile comes from the Hebrew word Chayil, right? So his emperor, his imperial majesty, Haile Selassie, means Chayil Hashlishiya, or Hashlosha, Haile Selassie, Chayil Shalosh, which means might of the Trinity, or might of the three, like might as in strength. So about Hailey and the flying spaghetti monster. Okay, I see. All right. Yom Revi'i, says Robert Harrison. Well, now it's after sundown, so technically, halachically speaking, after the sun goes down and at sunset, the new day begins. So it's Yom Chamishi, the fifth day. But yes, we had a wonderful Wednesday, the first of the first moon, right, of Adar, and it was a wonderful day. I had such a gorgeous Rosh Chodesh, such a wonderful beginning to this month. Really, I have. The Burning Element says, I just live in Tennessee and study Torah. I just consider myself a Torah follower, nothing more or less. Good for you, because who needs labels, right? Just like I say that I'm just me, I'm just an Am Haaretz, I'm just Yonatan, no more, no less. That's what I aspire to be at any rate. So I hear what you're saying, and that's a good thing. That titles and names and different things can, well, it can be a gateway to hubris and pride, which is not that good. So good for you. Keep it that way. It doesn't mean you'll have to stay that way, but also keep it that way. You can add things on. It's like, what does Lao Tzu say? He says the sage, even when he's carrying a very great burden, he himself remains indifferent, right? Which translated for me and in this context is, even if when you know that you're carrying that yoke and that burden of Torah and commandments and covenant, to see yourself as just someone who doesn't make a difference, right? Someone who's very simple and does his own thing. Yeah. A person's actions, they speak for themselves, right? And the Torah, if anything, it stirs us to act. It calls on us to act and to enact the commandments in our life. This Torah was given to living, breathing, walking, talking human people. So let's see. Ariel says, I wonder why babies in the womb still have webbed fingers, but this changes before we are born. Well, I'll tell you. The fingers represent the 10 sfirot. The fingers, let's just leave it at that. The fingers represent the 10 sfirot. In the womb, there is, it's a transitional phase. Before things are torn apart, well, not torn, before they break apart, at the root they are one. Before we come into this world with all of our own neatly packed, you know, traits and, well, good things and bad things and everything that life entails, we are sort of, right, in that womb, being fed directly and not using our own, not being self-sufficient. When we go out into the world, even as babies, right, There's something over there that already signifies a great shift from the world inside of the womb to the world outside, obviously. And so I think that in the womb, it's a kind of a root place, which is, I suppose, evolution aside, right? Represented by the webbed fingers, which are still webbed. And then when you leave that place and things fractionate, that's when the webbing disappears. But that's just my own musing on it. I uh, I know that there was the idea of webbed fingers. I didn't recall if it's still webbed in the womb. But yeah, if that's the case, even more so, right? Let's see. Little Andre says, and more, the smokers of the herb, I'm assuming it's herb, right? Not herd, not so sacred, because all herbs are equally sacred, good. Um, Objectively maybe, but subjectively, no, I disagree. Because we are the ones who set apart the herb, right? God says in Eden that I give you all of the grain, right, and the herb and the seeds. So in that sense, like, yes, they are all good, but they are all good for different things. Certain things are for remedy, and certain things are for sustenance, and certain things are. So I don't know if they're all equally sacred, but because we are the ones who make them sacred de facto in the world, right? We set them apart for different uses. So in that sense, I suppose, yes, you're right. I'm just rambling. But the song can get stuck in your head for a while. Did get stuck in mine anyway. Oregon Freebird says, speaking of organized religion, my dad is a Christian pastor. We do not discuss anything biblical because there is so much disagreement. Well, hey, you know what? With some people, that's the way to go. What do people say? Don't discuss politics and religion, right? So if you guys can still have a relationship that's based on love and mutual trust and understanding, there can be disagreement, uh, but so much that causes fractures, that's you know, unless it comes to a head, right? Unless it comes to a point where there's something physical, practical that there's great disagreement about, that's an issue that must be resolved, that's a different story. As long as it stays in the realm of the theological and intellectual difference and whatnot, then you can avoid it and you can still have a good father daughter relationship, I think. I think. I don't know. Ariel says apparently his lack of webbing prevented him from swimming and digging holes efficiently. Well, that's interesting. Are you saying that at the time they'd have okay, so at the time they had it, he didn't, and swimming and digging holes. Well, again, I'd love the source on that. Robert says to Oregon Freebird, "Your dad is a good man." All right, it's almost a half hour, and I think I'm going to go soon. If I don't finish the whole chat here, I will pick this up on Friday or Monday, probably Monday. But let's see. How is it, brother? Says little Andre to Craig. Yo, yo. Like brother in South African. What do you mean by you'd like to write your own Torah, though? Oregon Freeburn says to Robert, I agree, which is why I'm careful about what I say to him, right? That he's a good man. I don't like to stress him out. Hey, good for you. I'll never label myself, said the burning element. Wise woman, says Robert. I agree, wise woman. As long as it doesn't look, you shouldn't sweep things under the rug if they merit contending with. But as long as there isn't anything that you feel that you need to contend with, a hill that you must die on, and you can still have a relationship, again, of mutual understanding, love, respect, family, then I think that's the preferable thing. If push comes to shove, then you'll know what to do. And you have others to consult with, I know, I'm sure. Let's hope it doesn't have to come to that, and that you can stay respectful, and that you can stay, right, that it won't, but we'll see. Time will tell. Let's hope that that's the case. Craig, may Yah bless you too, says little Andre. Organ said to the burning element, same, no labels, just Torah keeper. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. We're just trying to walk that path. We're just trying to walk before God and be perfect with all of our imperfections. Craig says to Lelandre, how's it, bro? Would love to sit and write it out. A little each day. We'll do it in English for now, but would love to write out in proper Hebrew once I learn to read and write it properly. Oh, man. Oh, man. Yeah, to write it in Hebrew for sure. Ariel says, apparently everyone used to be covered in hair also, so our ancestors look like a frog squatch. Well, yeah, the human mammal is one of the only mammals that is not covered in hair. We have hair in certain strategic locations, and I believe that it's the same. It's natural for men and it's natural for women. Whether you want to shave it off or not, that's already a question of aesthetics. But there's no question about it being a natural thing, right? You can be attracted to this, attracted to that. This turns you on, that turns you on. You want to do it for yourself, you want to do it for others, I don't know, to each his and her own. But certainly having hair is natural, certainly in those locations. And yeah, at some point we lost it. And you see, the thing is, we lost it, some say, because of clothing. Because of clothing. We didn't need the hair on the head. If we could keep the hair on the head and in a few other places, but clothing replaced in a big way our need for hair over time, right? Over evolutionary periods. And the fact that we got clothing only after we were kicked out of Eden, right? Or at that breaking point when we became cognizant of our failures and our um, frailties, our sensitivities, our inadequacies, the fact that we were naked, that whole thing, that speaks a lot to the nature of this world. Speaks a lot to the idea of what we used to be and what we are now. Now I speak a lot about Eden, right? About Eden in this place, in this channel, and in my life. But as I've said before, I'm not laboring under the delusion that I will be able to bring Eden 100% into my life here. Because we were kicked out, and we were kicked out for a reason. But we were also given the Torah, that path, that tree of life, right? That leads to the path of the tree of life. Put under guard, but never forbidden. Put under guard. And I think we all want to reach that place and go back to more and more of our shared root as human beings, as individuals. That if we should not happen, if we should arrive at that place, at that path leading to the tree of life, that the Kruvim, the cherubs, right, the messengers, the keepers of the gate, and the flaming sword that turns in every direction, that they will be able to become guides in that path, as I mentioned before. On that note, I'm going to say goodbye and good night. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your kind attention. I don't take it for granted. I love it that you're here. Oh, well, maybe I'll read a couple more comments here, man. Maybe I'll read a couple more comments because I love it. Robert says, I noticed Jerusalem goes up like a set of stairs almost to the Temple Mount. Yeah, it's a very high place with lower mountains all around it. But the Temple Mount, if I'm not mistaken, topographically, is one of the higher places. Ariel says, do you remember who was the first hairless person was supposed to be? I think it was Hanoch. Well, I wouldn't know. There's a lot of different midrashic teachings about Hanoch, and the fact that he was taken away and that he didn't die a natural death. So again, that's another break from human beings to something else. Now you can argue that in the previous, well, you know what? No, let's not. Let's just keep going. If I open this up right now with all kinds of different things, I'll be here for another hour. And though I love it, it's not what I want to do right now. So I'm gonna say goodbye. I did say goodbye. Let's have a wonderful new moon of Adar. Thank you again for bearing with me. This being live and raw, sometimes I forget, sometimes I stumble, sometimes I fall. I miss things, I do things, I don't things. But what it comes down to, the bottom line is, I love doing this. You people out there here in the chat, people who are watching, subscribers, people who, whatever it is, the fact that you are engaging here or in the DMs, wherever you are, the fact that you give a like, that you give a sub, that you click and you give a watch, you give a listen to my rants, it means a lot to me. I don't take it for granted. God willing, I will see you Friday for the weekly Torah portion, Truma, in which we get the commandment to make a temple, make a sacred place.